Put a little whiskey in there. I'm joking. I don't drink. 33 years, no drinks. It's unbelievable. It's
25 años.
huh?
I put 25 years.
20. It's 33 now.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
We've known each other a while.
I know. No digas, yo todavía estoy más joven. We're going to start with the Q&A.
Okay.
Preguntas. Pues su papel primero protagónico que empezó fue cuando hizo el video con Madonna.
Yeah, that was my first job. Mi primer trabajo era con Madonna. I was a stand-in for the lead actor. It was my first job. I got paid $100 a day, and Madonna would dance around me. And then when they got done with the choreograph, they would kick me out and put me back to the trailer and bring the actor in. That was my first job. See, I was very young, you know. I was like 19, I think, or 19 or 20. And so it was in Staten Island, which is interesting because I just left Staten Island doing a FBI's Most Wanted, you know, it's like 35 years later or whatever it is, with Dylan McDermott. We just did that, and all those memories came back with my first job as a stand-in on a Papa Don't Preach video. And Madonna was coming up with her entourage. And back then she was like so amazing because everywhere she went she had all these people. It was like a peacock, you know, and all these colorful things and colorful people and interesting dancers. And when you'd see her walk up, it was incredible because, you know, you see her, she's the star, and behind her is this pyramid of people. And they're like, I'm not talking like 5 people entourage, I'm talking like 30 people. All these dancers, and you know, she was so creative and stuff, and fascinating person. So she walked up, and I was standing by a fence, and she was supposed to go see the director, and she stopped. And she looked at me and she says, "Who are you?" I said, I'm just a little stand-in guy over here, you know. I was so nervous, you know, and she was very gracious. She took me where we had to go dance, and for 2 days she would take me around the city and took me in a limo, and, you know, made me feel very comfortable because, you know, I was so nervous. It was my first job, and she took me to a place called Palladium, and we had a great time there and danced, and, you know, and that was my breakthrough in the business.
Made something a date with her or not?
Well, you know, I don't kiss and tell anyway, so.
So she didn't make a pass at you.
Well, you know, like I said, I don't kiss and tell. I'm not one of those guys. You know, that movie has overshadowed my whole career, Blood In, Blood Out, Sangre por Sangre. I think to me it's way more than just a movie to me. For me, it was a cultural roller coaster ride because, you know, when I auditioned, I went into a place on Hollywood and Vine, and I was going in for another movie called The Bridge. And I was sitting there reading the lines. I had never done a movie before, only theater in New York, and like I said, a stand-in thing with Madonna, and only theater. I was a theater actor. So I was trying to break into movies. So I'm reading for The Bridge, and I'm trying to get the lines down, and a guy named Rick Pagano, who's a casting agent for Blood In, Blood Out, he comes up to me and says, "Are you here for Miklo?" I said, "What's a Miklo?" And he hands me the sides, and it said, "Blue-Eyed Chicano." And I immediately said, how can this be happening to me? This is who I am, you know. My whole life trying to fit in to the Mexican side of my family and being embraced actually more than the other side of the family, which is why I was, you know, it was very dear to me. It was very emotional for me because all my tias and tios, when I was young, you know, I had a kind of a tough childhood, and, you know, my mother had alcoholic problems, and she would go away for long periods of times, and my tias would bring me in, and they would be so warm with me, and they would cook in the morning for me migas. I don't know if you know what migas.
Right.
And I learned how to cook migas from my tias, and I learned more about our, you know, the Chicano experience. And for me, you know, I was still trying to fit in though, because I was, you know, my grandmother would take me to Robstown, Texas. I don't know if you know about Robstown, Texas, the cotton pickers. That's the high school, you know, the slang is cotton pickers. But so she would take me to this little city, Robstown. Yeah. And I didn't have the Chicano experience or the Mexican-American experience because I was brought up in Ohio and then later New York. So, you know, for me, it was all new to me. And I'd go in and she would take me by the hand with her little warm Indian hand, and she would take me into these little pan de dulces. And I'd go in, I'd see all this colored bread. And you'd smell the bread, you know, like you walk in, and those memories they all came back to me when I did Blood and Blood Out, because I go to Cinco Puntos and all the Panda Dulces, and, you know, I would remember my Chicano experience as a little güerito. My grandma called me her little güerito. And, you know, it was a big part of the foundation of Miklo, because I experienced it already. So then in Blood and Blood Out, I had to re-experience all this, trying to fight to fit in, you know. But to be honest with you, I was embraced by the community more than any community that I'm a part of, you know. So for me, the Chicano experience has been a beautiful experience, and especially Blood and Blood Out, because I had to, you know, I had to play off of what I've already gone through, which is, you know, my father, in the movie, my mother's Mexican, but in my real life, my father was Mexican. It was opposite, you know, and dealing with the racism from the other side of the family, and, you know, fighting and defending my father all the time. Because there was a lot more racism early on in the 50s and 60s. I don't think so. I think people push that more today, but I think there's more love between people, that they want to love each other if they could be allowed. But I think back then it was real, you know, and I experienced it because on the white side of my family, they would say, oh, your dad's this, and your dad, you know, they would make these horrible racial comments, and I started to stand up and fight for my father because I saw what he went through, and he told me, and this was part of Blood and Blood Out for me, because, you know, the experience is me saying, hey, look, use me, use this, you know, when I tell a meadow in Blood and Blood Out. So that experience was real for me. Well, I think one of my favorite, there's so many, it's such a long movie, it's 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Vatos Locos Forever.
Vatos Locos Forever is the main one. But one of the ones I like, there's so many. One of them, there's two of them, if I may.
Right.
The one where I say to El Mero Mero, Chicano is not a color, it's the way you think and the way you live. And I loved that because it was really who I was, you know. And then another one is when I walk in the prison yard with Magic, and, you know, all these things that I've been fighting to do as Miklo, to fit in with my community, to understand what being a Chicano is, and to be accepted. Finally, Miklo becomes accepted, not only in the community, but in La Onda.
Yeah.
And he looks at Magic and he says, when you expect nothing and you get everything, that's destiny. I like that one.
Or movies for your, you look more güero or not?
It's a good question because, you know, I found myself for years.
Stereotypical.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely right.
But I need to know in his person that.
No, but he's right because, you know, what happened is they stereotyped me in that type of role for a long time. And then I would get called in as a, you know, Chicano or Latino gangster a lot after Blood and Blood Out. And some of the directors would, when I walk in, they'd say, you're not Mexican, what are you talking? Because they didn't know any better. You know, we know as a community, everybody's got a güerito somewhere around, you know. But for them, they were like, wait a minute. And then I said, well, see Blood and Blood Out and you'll understand it. You know, but I finally broke that kind of thing, and they started to bring me in for all kinds of roles. You know, I get brought in now for a lot of Italian Americans because I do have a bit of heritage with Italy long ago, which they went to Mexico and changed the name from Schiappa Pietra, which is Italian, to Chapa, which is a Latinized form of that. So I get called in for Irish roles now and all kinds of things. But I do think that Blood and Blood Out overshadowed my whole career. And I think it's the movie that's transcended to where it is now, which is, to me, everywhere I go, people say, Blood and Blood Out, Miklo, Vatos Locos. It's more than a movie, I think, for me. And for people in the community, it's a Chicano experience. And I know a lot of people, you know, they look at the movie and you have different opinions because it's a very intense movie. It's not the kind of movie that, you know, it's not a light movie at all. It shows the racism that happened in not only outside of the prison, but specifically inside of the prison. And I think it's a real movie. It shows the reality, and people don't look at it like a movie. It's a Chicano experience, you know? Like you had the Jimi Hendrix experience, well, this was the Chicano experience, you know?
Thank you.
Question. Last time we spoke, it was Tres Pinos, and you were mentioning a new movie that was coming out called Latin Hate.
Yes.
Did that movie ever come to fruition?
Yes, it did on VOD. You know, I think that a lot of films nowadays, it's not like it used to be, where films come out. Like I just had a movie come out yesterday, I think, or was it Wednesday? Wednesday, it just came out, and it's everywhere online now. And you know, you used to have a theatrical release for a lot of movies, but now it's not like that anymore. Only certain movies get a big theatrical release, you know, because you have to have.
I was looking for it actually. So.
Yeah, well, you can see that now. You can look at that on, you know, Vudu and all these, Amazon, and another good independent way is Tubi. Tubi's really coming up now. And I just had a movie release called Mexican Connection, which you might enjoy. That just came out 2 days ago. And like I said, I'm coming out in FBI's Most Wanted. That comes out on May 9th. And that was a great experience working with Dylan McDermott. He's a really good actor. And the interesting thing is, they were all talking about Blood In, Blood Out on the set. And Dylan, he didn't even know it was me, because, you know, we haven't seen each other in 30 years. But we screen tested in Blood In, Blood Out together. And he looked at me when we were on the set, and he says, "You took Miklo from me, man. You took Miklo." And then, we reunited, you know, as friends. And he kept talking about Blood In, Blood Out. He was kind of like, you know, people love this film that are not even in the community. There are times when I come to, like, I'll get on a plane, and, you know, of course, America, we're filled with our culture, Mexican Americans everywhere. So, but when you get on a plane and you get off in Sweden, and you get off the plane and some Swedish family comes up, and I'm talking little girls with blonde hair and like Swedish you can get, and old grannies and everything come up and say, "Vatos locos forever," you know? And you're like, how does this happen, you know? But it's quite interesting, you know, it goes over
based on
that.
your heritage, I mean, you have a diverse space as far as playing different characters. You do Aguayo, you've done, you said Russian or something like that?
I've done Russian, I've done
So
Italian.
You do the accent.
Yes, I can do all the accent, the Russian accent, very easy for me. I like it. Привет, да, давай. I better be careful. Russian's not so in anymore, is it? Okay, do Ukrainian.
There's still Russian though.
Yeah. Well, let's not get in there.
Last question. How do you see that movie with American Me? Because there's similarities, and did they do that film in an actual prison?
Well, you know, I don't know if you can, and I know people do compare American Me with Blood In, Blood Out, but I think they're completely different experiences. You know, it's interesting. I did Blood In, Blood Out, and then after I did Blood In, Blood Out, it became a cult film, you know, if I may say. And then American Me had a lot of trouble for many reasons, which you may or may not be aware of. And it was a very, very difficult situation, what happened with Edward James Olmos. I don't know if, I'm sure you're aware of it. So I think what Taylor Hackford did, which was different and probably better, is he stayed away from the real thing, and he changed our name. Instead of making it the real and showing the reality in that sense, he changed it to La Onda. Instead of the leader of the real Mexican, he made me Miklo. You know, which really was a wise thing to do.
Yeah, it was.
It protected us, it protected the crew, it protected the film, and it made it more like, you know, a West Side Story experience. It was like fantasy. Yeah, and then strangely enough, I get connected with Edward James Olmos. We did a movie together afterwards, so everybody was talking about, oh, Blood In, Blood Out, American Me, you know, what are you guys going to talk about? But he played my father in Lyle Menendez, Murder in Beverly Hills. So we were like at each other in the movie, and it was kind of like this competitive thing we had, and it really worked together because he's such a great actor, you know. And I loved working on that movie, Menendez, Murder in Beverly Hills. But I don't think American Me is the same type of experience. People consider it similar, but when you really watch those movies,
But did that movie come after the fact when you did Blood In, Blood Out? Wasn't that an inspiration? Because, you know, a lot of these producers, they create, you know, movies from other movies. They're always copying something.
well, I think people have tried to kind of recreate that type of experience for Blood In, Blood Out. I even tried in El Padrino to get a little bit of that force. But I don't think anything could be like Blood In, Blood Out. Because Blood In, Blood Out was, you know, you've got people like Jesse Borrego. You know, to me, Jesse Borrego, who played Cruz, he's the best actor in America. He's the most underrated actor in America. And that guy's acting ability is so real. You know, I always try to credit myself as being a real actor, but I'm nothing compared to Jesse Borrego. That guy, when you see him, it's the well of talent that comes up from him and the emotion. It's so poetic and so real that when I watch Blood In, Blood Out, people say, oh, you're great, you're Miklo. And I said, what's Jesse Borrego? That's an actor. That's a poet. He to me is a genius. I love Jesse Borrego. And he's the thread of emotions through the movie for me to watch. I mean, you see those emotions he creates in that movie. And then you have Danny Trejo, who, you know, can't help but be natural at what he did in that movie. He was like the epitome of...
Last time we talked to him, he mentioned you.
Oh, Danny?
Yeah.
I love Danny. You know, he's a friend and he's a great actor. And he's developed himself into this icon with hard work. Danny works hard, you know, and I think actors understand actors. Some people don't understand actors, but we work really hard to get where we get. It's not easy to do what we do, you know. And to stay like he has, like Danny has, oh my God. I mean, I'm driving down Pacoima and Cesar Trevino, my booker, we're going down there and we look and there's this big wall on the side of it, and there's Danny, and I'm just so proud of him. We started, Cesar and I, my booker, for meet and greets. The tour has just, you know, it started at 1, and now it's like 35 meet and greets we have for the 30-year anniversary of Blood and Blood Out. And you know, we just left Monterrey. I don't know if you know that, but we went to Mexico, and we went to Monterrey, and it's incredible. You go there, and there's big murals of Blood and Blood Out. And I'm talking gigantic. Like, it's not like a little thing. You see, it's as big as this building. And you look up, and, you know, you see Danny and Cruz and, you know, see Miklo. And it's kind of a nice experience, you know, that people accept it so much. So we started there for the 30-year anniversary tour. We have so many more to go to. And we have one on the 29th, I believe it is, East Los Tacos, Sunday at 2 to 4 p.m. To me, it's incredible because, you know, I've experienced it for 30 years now, this cult status of Blood and Blood. And I think 10 years into it, I was like, wow, this is great. You know, people know the movie, and I go places and I get recognized, which as an actor is a wonderful thing. And then 20 years, you think, what the heck? It's growing. And then 30 years later, you go to a store, and some little kid comes up to you. Some little chico comes up. He's maybe, I'm not kidding you, 7 years old. And he starts doing the swag, the Miklo said, hey, Vatos Locos Forever. And I'm like, this 7-year-old kid, like he saw the movie yesterday in the theater. And it's unbelievable how it's grown, you know, to this status. I'm not only proud of it, I think it's fascinating. And I'm very amazed by it. I've been hearing Blood and Blood Out 2 is going to be happening for 20 years now. You know, even Taylor, Taylor Hackford's like the most powerful guy that we all know from this production. He's the director, and he's the one in with Hollywood. Now, they just came out in the LA Times with an article, and Taylor spoke about it. See, Disney was afraid of Blood and Blood Out because of the violence, and understandably so. They're a company that, you know, they tend to do movies that are more
Well,
for...
it seems like you got the demographics for it. I mean, people love it. They want to see it.
Yeah.
They should at least, you know, vote for it and say, hey, you know, make that movie. Because I know it costs a lot of money to make a movie.
Yeah, but I think that they should also get on the bandwagon with this status it has and re-release it. You know, it's like Taylor Hackford said. They not only are losing money, you know, the culture wants it. This film is more than just a movie to us. It really shows our lives. We all understand it because we all have a little güerito like Miklo. We all have an artist like Cruz. We all have people that are, you know, in trouble. All families have this. It's all about survival.
It's actually all about the American dream.
Yes, and it is about the American dream, you know, and we are the American dream. The Mexican-American community, to me, is the ultimate American dream. And I think the reason why we are so powerful, we normally value life more than any community. You know, for us as Mexicanos or Chicanos or whatever you want to say, you know, we look at children, and that's like the next generation, and that's what's creating this blessing. We're becoming the most powerful. And people may be a little afraid of that. Yeah, David Garza, my other booker here, and Israel Martinez and I were speaking about that just in the car right before we walked in. You know, what about Ben? You know, and it's funny because I think Ben had a little bit of fear probably because of the type of character he played. You know, like we would go, and I understand him because we would go certain places and people would come up and say, hey man, why'd you shoot your cousin, eh? You know, and it's like, so it's real to people. But I think now he's finally realizing that it's okay to jump on the bandwagon with this whole process, the 30-year anniversary. because he just put a picture of me and him on Instagram. So, and it's from Blood, and he's saying, hey, 30 years celebrates, this movie meant so much to me. So I think you're going to start seeing Ben. You know, there's a lot of, hay muchas historias que puede hacer en el segundo, parte de Sangre por Sangre. Pero I think the first thing that I would do as a character, and I've talked about it with some of the creators of Blood and Blood Out, I think Miklo has to come out to the street again. You know, you can translate for me.
No, I can understand.
Okay, okay. So Miklo would come out to the street again. I mean, look, this is my perception, but, you know, he comes out, and the first thing he has to do is he has to take out Popeye. He's got to get rid of Popeye, you know, because Popeye snitched on Miklo. A lot of people don't realize, but Popeye is the one that called and made the snitch, and he got me put in jail and my leg shot off. So Popeye's got to go. But you know, it's hard to get rid of Popeye because he's such a colorful character. The movie was not like a 1-month movie. I shot 6 months of my life for that movie. It was like going to war, you know. It was a very difficult role. But I think that Miklo does come out, and he's gained more power, more wisdom, more age, and he comes out to the street. And I think what would be interesting, look, we all have our ideas what would be good for Blood and Blood Out too. But for me, it would be to bring Cruz off the drugs. The thing I think as my character, I'd like to bring Cruz off the drug, get him sober, get him who he should be, this powerful guy he is. You know, somebody came up to me one time and said, aren't you feeling guilty? And I said, why? He says, look at what you caused, man. I said, what do you mean? And he took it really personal. And I understood him because he thought that my character was responsible for people joining gangs and doing this. And you know, he may or may not be right about it. But I told him, I said, look, you can't blame me for it. I was some young guy trying to be an actor, and this amazing role comes in front of me. Who would not have done it? I try to tell him, look what happened to Miklo.
Well, it's basically a downward spiral. When you
Right.
Go out, you go to jail and then you...
I lose my leg. I lose everything. All I have is La Onda left. But what I tell the kids is when they say, oh, Miklo, I say, wait a minute, maybe Miklo did a lot and he overcame a lot. But look what happened to Miklo. He's in prison and he stays there. He's very tragic. He stays.
I like the way they set it up where you go in and they give you more privileges because you're white.
There's that white privilege card again,
You're catching a ride on the wrong train. You ought to be up here at the front of the line, head of those jungle bunnies.
I don't take no free tickets on no one's train.
Now, you take a ticket or you get run over. It's better to ride up front, first class, eat with the white folks. Know what I mean?
But I tell you, it's, and I know people talk about that a lot nowadays, but I think it's a struggle for everyone in this world. The world is not easy, life is not easy, especially in this geopolitical situation we're all in. And I think we need to unite a little bit more. I think when I grew up in the 80s, we were more united as a people, Americans, believe it or not. I don't know what you guys think. I think the older guys know what I'm saying. We go to discos and parties, and Iranians would be there, Jews would be here, blacks would be there, Chicanos, Italian. We would have fun, We didn't have all this thing. I feel sorry for people today. The Mexican-American population is the privilege. When you look around and you say, well, where's the people in charge? We're in charge.
Unfortunately, in prison, it's not that way.
Well, you're absolutely right, but when you go to prison, it all separates. You have the white, the black,
I mean, literally, that's black and white totally right there.
No, you're absolutely correct. But that tells you something. That's tribal. That's very tribal, and it's survival. What else are they going to do? It's survival. But it's a very difficult thing. Our system's a bit screwed up, as you know. I mean.
That's an understatement, brother.
No, I think, no, I agree with you. I think, look, everybody has their ways, how we could save the world, how we could save our society. But I think, the first thing to do is stop saying it's them. In this country, the way our country is, I think anyone, I don't care what color you are, I don't care who you are, I think if you work hard in this country, you can make it. Because we have the opportunity here. I've lived all over the world. Raza unites, it's all over. you know? Did I go too political there? I hope not. Hey, I like this guy's idea. Hey, you want to be vice president? He wants to run for president.